Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Gary Ace Twaby, and you're now watching the Snowfall Aftermath. And today we will be recapping Snowfall Season 5, Episode 6. And the title of the episode was The Iliad Part 2, a continuation of last week's episode. I'm here with Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. How are you doing, Rich?
Doing good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
What's up, indeed? This was a very interesting episode. Some of the things we spoke about last week was kind of addressed in this. We got to learn a bit more. So we have a lot of takeaways, a lot of things that we want to highlight, and as usual, we'll take turns to give our personal takeaways, and then afterwards we'll go into our questions and discussion segment, where we'll have a bit of a back and forth about the events of this episode. But before that, just a friendly reminder, if you enjoy the content, if you like this episode, if you like this series that we have here, this Snowfall Aftermath, please do support us by dropping your comments, hitting the like button, and checking out the channel and possibly subscribing to it. If you like the other content we have, we cover the Power series as well. We have a review of Top Boy. We're reviewing Halo, and Morbius, and some of these other things that are coming out. Sonic 2. So definitely check out the channel. There's a lot of content there, a lot of different types of things to look into. But yeah, if you enjoy what we do, please do support us with that like and the comment and the subscribe. Like, that helps us out a lot. It keeps us going. So I just want to emphasize that. Mm-hmm. But enough with the house cleaning. I'm going to get right into the takeaways, and I believe it is my turn to go first this week. So let me get right into it. So the tiger thing. Now, after last week's episode, me and Richard actually spoke about, the whole tiger thing, Franklin and Gustavo being trapped in the cage by this, the crazy guy who he has stuffed animals in his living room, and now he has this tiger in a cage in his backyard or whatever. We spoke about this last week, and it seemed a bit unrealistic. But one of the commenters actually, pointed out that, this is something that actually happened. There was a tiger. And also I remember hearing a story as well. It was something about Harlem in New York. And there was actually a guy who had a tiger in his apartment. So these kinds of crazy stories are possible. It might not be, it might not be something that happens on the regular, or it might not be stuff that we see, but these things do happen with people having like crazy wild animals, in their house and everything. But my thing is, it was the implementation in this episode that, I just wanted to kind of critique a little bit, because it just seemed a little too convenient how it all played out with the tiger. And I think it was that the fact that it was too convenient, too clean, the way it happened. I think that is what a lot of people will have a problem with, because it stands out in a show like Snowfall, because up to this point they've been so authentic in setting the tone, making it look realistic and everything. Like it looks real, it seems real, it feels like something that really happened. And it's like, these little moments of convenience, and like, because the fact that we're seeing a tiger itself is kind of crazy to us, but we know that it is technically possible, because it happened. People had a tiger in their house or whatever, but it's just the way you present it. It might not fit with what we know of the show, Snowfall so far, because we're used to it being so realistic. Now, what I mean by that is, just the whole sequence of, when Franklin brought the gang members back to the house, because he told them the money was there, and conveniently, the tiger was like outside the cage, and then it conveniently jumped on the enemies, Franklin's enemies and stuff. Like, it didn't hurt him in any way. Like, he wasn't affected by the tiger. It just immediately went for the gang members. just it's just little things like that where it's like, wow, this is so convenient. Like the fact that the tiger just went for these guys and not Franklin, and he was able to run away and it didn't try to follow him. And then, of course, they had a little comedic moment to it as well. When everything worked out and they were ready to drive away, and then you see the tiger come out into the street. So there was that little comedic element, and that is fine actually. I liked that part of it, but yeah, it was just the way it happened, the way the sequence played out felt a little too convenient for me, given that this was something so strange that we're not used to seeing. So that was my only thing about that, but I am glad they didn't spend too long on it, because one of the concerns I had was that they were going to spend the whole episode, or like 40 minutes of the episode, of them in the cage trying to get out. And I'm glad they kind of basically got out within the first 5 minutes. So that was cool. And then something that we're probably going to talk about later. But, one thing this episode did was it made the character Veronique, Franklin's girlfriend who's pregnant, it made her seem more genuine. It made her come across like more genuine a little bit. And the way I'm saying that is, the reason I'm saying that is because, we got the ultrasound thing, which confirmed that there's a baby in there. Now, you could say something about that too, which I'll explain more later. But you could say something about that. But the way it was showed to us, it's like, okay, there is a baby there, because I know some people were thinking, oh, she's not really pregnant and stuff like that. So they had the ultrasound scene, right? And then also just the fact that she left Franklin after everything went down and they were speaking in the club. And then, she says she's going to go home, but then she doesn't actually return home. And that kind of makes it feel like, okay, maybe she really is concerned. Maybe she really is committed to having Franklin's child. But the fact that, she could be vulnerable and the baby could be hurt, maybe this scares her. And, if she's feeling that, then maybe she really is committed to this and she's not being deceitful. So the episode tries to make you feel like Veronique is actually genuine, that, there's nothing really fake about her. But there was one thing she said about her mother. And, this is what I'm going to raise later on in our questions and discussions. And, that is the part that now makes it makes the red flags go up a little bit. So, yeah, but I just like that, the show tries to cast that shadow of doubt on you, like, oh, you judged this character completely wrong. But then it's just little things like that are like, wait a minute, her mother's a scammer. So it's like, yeah, like, so I really don't know. I don't know what to think about the character. I feel like they are setting up something, but then it has me second guessing myself at the same time, because it's like, if you're having Franklin's child, what are you really trying to do here? Like, and then, I mean, we know that there's the property, like the property that they're investing in. So, I guess we'll talk about it later, because I want to talk, like, there's something I want to raise and I want Rich to respond to. So I'll bring that up later. But yeah, that's just something that stood out to me, the whole Veronique thing. And then another thing I want to talk about later a little bit is, so, Oso, aka Gustavo, we see they have that moment of bonding in this episode. Now, there's a moment where, because Franklin leaves to show the guys where the money was, quote unquote, because he doesn't really do it, but they tell them basically, only one of you is coming to show me where the money is, and they leave behind Gustavo. And when it comes back to, when Franklin gets free and then it comes back to Gustavo, you're left wondering, is Franklin just going to leave him there, or is he going to come back for him? And then, of course, it's confirmed that Franklin did come back, with Jerome and everyone to rescue him. But, even Gustavo himself was doubting that Franklin would come back. Like, he didn't expect him to. I guess he felt like he didn't owe him that even, but he did. And that makes me think now that although they were in it together, and he might not necessarily owe anything to Franklin because they were both trying to get out and get away, but I feel like now there's going to be an underlying level of loyalty between them, and is that dynamic is going to be interesting once things start to progress with the Teddy plotline, and this tension between Franklin and Teddy. Um, so yeah, I'm wondering how far they're going to push the button on that. With Gustavo and his position between Franklin and Teddy. So that's just an interesting thing that stood out to me also in this. Um, and then so yeah, so the whole Kane reveal, we finally had the Kane reveal in this, and it kind of happened really quickly at the end where they were like, oh, actually Kane got out, such and such his brother, he got out, and then it transitions into the scene where Franklin and Kane come face to face, and Franklin kind of he kind of puts out there that, look, this doesn't have, like, this could be very easy, this doesn't have to go the way you want it to go. And Kane doesn't want to hear anything. He doesn't want to hear any of that. So he's on full smoke right now. Like, he wants to smoke basically with Franklin, and he's not going to back down. And he was even saying, next time I'm sending better people after you. So now it's on. The beef is on pretty much, which is going to put a lot of pressure on Franklin because he has to protect the people around him. And then also he has to try and continue this relationship with Teddy and Gustavo so that they actually have, something to sell. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on him because Teddy's not going to want this to happen again. And there are going to be some changes. I'm sure, it's not going to be just a case of, okay, it's Monday now and I'm back to work and things are running just as they were before. It's not going to be that anymore. Like, things are going to change. The whole process of them working together is going to change. So I'm wondering what strain this tension with Kane is going to have on everyone now. And the one thing that happened in this episode also is we saw Jerome had a very short fuse. He beat up that guy. I guess that was the scene we saw in the trailer where he was like beating someone up. And yeah, he seems very tense now. And I'm wondering what his reaction is going to be to this, because in that scene where they talk about Kane, before they meet Kane, they talk about him being out now. I don't believe Jerome was in that scene. But I'm wondering what his take is going to be on this and if he might actually try to have a conversation with Kane, because Jerome is kind of seen as that elder kind of spokesman in the streets and everything. So I think if anyone could try to appeal to Kane, maybe it's Jerome, but that could also get ugly too if those two have a conversation. So, I'm wondering if Jerome might try to play the mediator here, or if he's going to be fully on smoke as well. And of course, if Kane does come back and hurt someone, then I don't think it's going to be very easy to have another conversation at that point. But and if it ends up being Louis or another family member or something, I'm sure it's not going to be that easy for Jerome to defuse things. But one thing they can also do is they could call Scully to kind of step in and maybe either assist them or maybe try to fix things through some street politics or something like that, because we know there's a lot of gang politics in LA and things of that nature. So maybe they could somehow leverage Scully in this situation. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm just interested to see, how other people are going to react to Kane, specifically Jerome, just because he does have that kind of, that elder role in the streets and everything, and people know him. So I think if anyone's going to be the mediator here, I think he would be a good person. So, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, there's so much more to say about this episode, but I'm going to leave it there as far as my takeaways. We are going to talk about some stuff specifically later on, but I'm going to hand it over to, Richard Bailey here so he can give us his takeaways from this episode. So go ahead, Rich.
All right. First off, let me start by saying excellent takeaways as always, Gary. Um, I thought that this was a great episode. I do have one critique that I also want to open with. Let me start by saying we have some very intelligent, well-informed commenters, because sometimes when you watch this Snowfall show and you have to question certain things, like they're very quick to let us know exactly what the intention was with that. So I want to give them a special shout out. I appreciate every comment they leave, so on and so forth. So I want to mention JB because he is the one that made the comment last week about the Laguna Beach Zoo. And I believe the other day we had another commenter by the name of Don't Trip, I Said It. She is the one that also mentioned the same thing about the Laguna Beach Zoo and the fact that it was shut down. And that was where they got the tiger reference. Now, I want to also take a quick moment to shout out Inga71, because when we saw the first episode of Snowfall and they showed us the first episode of the season and they showed us the backstory just to give us an idea of Lynn Bias and what happened when he OD'd, you know, she was very she did a very good job of basically letting us know about the documentary and about the brother. And I didn't even know anything about the brother prior to that. But this is what I say when they do a very good job as far as they know exactly what they're talking about. They do the research and they catch when they put these things in the Snowfall show. So I did want to give them a shout out for that, because that's what I thought about in regards to this Laguna Beach Zoo situation. Is that my only criticism of this episode is that I don't think that they did a good enough job to really let people know that's what the reference is. Because, and the thing about it is that it wouldn't have taken much to do that. Now we know that the taxidermist that had them captured, this guy is a little bit crazy. If this is somebody that worked at that zoo and then he lost his mind or whatever, and of course he had the lion, I mean to say the tiger staying at his place, that's totally fine. But the problem is, for anyone that watches this show and they don't get the Easter eggs of this is stuff that happened in the 80s, it's a little hard for them to say, oh, well, this is great. To them, it looks like it's bad writing. And if I was somebody that worked on Snowfall, I would have all that I would have done if I knew they were going to do this, from the time when you saw Franklin and Gustavo inside that cell. You could have easily had it, whether it was during the time they were inside the cell or as they was escaping, maybe have a newspaper clipping that alludes to the actual shutdown of the Laguna Beach Zoo. Something like that, because people see that, it's going to pique their curiosity, and then they'll go back and want to see and learn about what happened during the 80s. So I kind of think that they didn't do too much of a good job really, executing on that. And that's why I also mentioned Inga71, because the way that she was talking about Lynn Bias and how they portrayed that in the season premiere, that was excellent, because it gave you just enough information to want you to make you want to go back and research more about what happened to him. And I thought that was excellent. But with this situation here, it's not enough context that they're putting in the actual show to give you an idea of, yes, this actually happened during the 80s. So I think they probably fell a little short on that. I'm not saying the show was bad, though. I know there are people that they saw that and then they said, oh, this show has gone off the rails. I disagree with that completely. But I thought this was a great episode. But yeah, that's the one area that I definitely would wish that they executed a little bit better on. Now, with that said, I'll finally go to the takeaways. So I agree with a lot of what Gary had to say. In this episode, the majority of the episode was focused on Franklin and Gustavo and continuing what happened last week. So you saw that they were trapped inside the cage. They had this plan to get out. And, when the taxidermist came out to try and free the tiger so that he can get himself a nice little meal, you saw that basically the way that Gustavo set it up, he set up like a little bit of a trap so that when this guy got on top of the cage, he ended up getting his foot stuck and he ended up going, his foot went through. And then, of course, the tiger had a nice little meal waiting for him right then and there. So I thought that was pretty comical. I know then we did see that in the midst of all that happening, the keys fell out and Franklin was able to grab the key and they were able to get out. Now, to give a special shout out to Raiwan, he had a great comment last week talking about, when Franklin and Gustavo left that money behind and they didn't bother closing the, the doorway, tightly. They didn't close the gate to this cage either. Because I went back and I saw the episode afterwards and I said, because I was wondering, how the hell did the tiger get out of the cage? And I think that's a question a lot of people had when we saw this later on in the episode, which I'll get into. But pretty much they get out and then they run into that gang once again. And the gang basically throws them in a trunk, brings them back to their place, and then basically beats and interrogates them to find out what happened to the money. So I thought that was very interesting because, again, we know that they were going to run into that gang again. I mean, it felt like that was necessary. So all that happens. In the meanwhile, you have Jerome, and he's out there looking for, I guess, they find Diamond and Dallas, the two women that work for Franklin, try to find out if they know anything about what happened, who set up the meet, and pretty much they're still trying to find out where Franklin is at. So we know that in the last episode, he did call Jerome and tell him that he was in Bell Gardens. So eventually Jerome and them got there, and they showed up a lot later on when they needed to show up to help Franklin basically do what he can to go back and get Gustavo. But the whole thing about the gang members being led to the area where the tiger was at, I thought that was very comical. I thought it was good for actions from an action standpoint. It made sense. But to me, to go back to what I said earlier with the critique, I feel like the tiger was introduced into this element just so that you knew this was going to be how the gang was going to be taken out. And I think that when you don't really give the further context you needed to talk about that whole backstory with the Laguna Beach, that I can understand why people be a little confused with that. So I think that's something that they could have improved upon, but I get it because we knew that Franklin at some point was going to get free, so it made sense for that to be what happened as far as him getting free. Now, to go to some very important things about the Franklin and Gustavo dynamic this entire episode. Let's talk about, there are two things I think really stood out. Now, as they were talking, as you mentioned, Gary, yes, Franklin and Gustavo trust each other. But a very interesting conversation was that Franklin made a comment to Gustavo about, I'm surprised you trust me because I know that you and Teddy spied on me not too long ago. And Gustavo got caught off guard by that because Gustavo was not involved with that. This is something that Teddy did all on his own. So planting the seeds just so that he's letting Gustavo know, don't trust Teddy. Teddy has ulterior motives. And I think that's important because we spoke last week about the loyalty that these two characters have, the relationship they are building. So that lets you know. And now Gustavo knows, you need to watch out with Teddy because he's very interested in Franklin. He considers him the asset and he will continue to spy on him now, I think, from here on out. Also, the other thing I think is important to mention, as you already mentioned, Gary, when Verone had her conversation with Sissy, and she's talking about her mom being a con woman and how she also was a part of that whole of all the stuff that her mom was doing. And but now she's reformed, she's honest, she's a lawyer, all this other stuff. And then you notice that after she had that conversation, Sissy tells her, "Oh yeah, I love my son. I cannot change anything that he has done, but you need to know that what happened with all this stuff here, with the shootings and stuff, this was going to happen again." So she basically warned her. Now, I thought to myself after that, she warned her for the reason, obviously, to say, yeah, you're having a child. You don't want the child to be involved. But I also think she did that as a way to protect Franklin, because that whole con woman thing, that was a huge red flag, as you said. And again, we're probably going to get into that a little bit later. But I think I find it very interesting that she would reveal that in this episode, because up until this point, everybody that's been watching the show, they don't trust this character and they don't like the character. So in this episode, while I do agree that they made her look a lot more genuine, the con woman thing is something I can't. That's something I really can't forgive. And you know that her mom did it, so you know that she did it, and maybe she didn't feel quite as good doing it as she got older, so she decided to basically try to straighten things up. But that doesn't mean she can't ever go back to that, because she's learned that as a kid. So she can definitely, it's something that she can definitely do as she was growing up. She learned about this, so she can definitely go back to that if she needs to. So we'll see what happens with that. A few other quick things I will mention about Franklin in this episode. As you mentioned, after Sissy has that conversation with Verone, Verone decides to leave Franklin. And, he's very upset about that. He didn't want her to leave. It makes sense to me why she would leave. She didn't feel that she was safe. So I don't really have a problem with that. But then, later on, when they get the ultrasound, they have the nice little scene of Franklin. And again, Damson Idris is an excellent actor. The scene where he's just sitting there, you hear the heartbeat and you can see tears welling up in his eyes. Just an excellent actor. You find out that she is 10 weeks pregnant. So you get a feeling of, yes, the baby, yes. Because I know there were some people out here who said she's not pregnant. Well, clearly she is. And clearly she is not behind what's happening. At least I believe she isn't. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they're doing a lot to make you feel as though she's a genuine character that you can trust. But again, we'll see where they're going with that. And the final thing I will mention about this particular takeaway is that the way they introduce Kevin, very interesting. By the way, if you are watching the show, you're wondering, why am I the former Pop Warner coach? I'm the coach that was in charge of that team before Kane threatened my livelihood and told me to stop doing it. So that's why I have to use that as my title for today. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was good as far as him mentioning stuff about, they had a cousin named Delroy who got stabbed in the past. And then again, mentioning all the stuff that happened with Kevin. Now, we obviously have to see where they're going with this. As Gary alluded to, yes, he did mention the family is completely broken because of what happened with Kevin. So I'm looking forward to seeing where they're going as far as this beef is concerned. Because again, this is I believe this is episode 6. There's only about 4 more episodes left in the season, I believe. So it makes me wonder, is this Kane character going to be a character that goes into next season? Should they get renewed for the 6th season, which I'm pretty sure is going to happen, or is this a character that will not make it to the end of the season? I mean, we have to wait and see. But I thought it was a very good introduction as far as him. And again, Franklin's past catching up with him, I think that absolutely needed to happen. Again, his empire is crumbling, so there's a lot of things that have to happen. So it made sense for me that why this went down in this episode. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens next week. So the final takeaway I do have, and this is a very short one, it's about Teddy in this episode. We didn't see too much of Teddy. He's still with Parissa. And I believe he was still drugged. They had that whole scene where he's waking up and she gives him a sedative to calm him down. And basically he does tell her that, hey, I need to use your phone to call my people. What we do find out is that in the midst of all this, because we saw last week, is that clearly you want to know what she wants. Well, she wants Teddy. She makes mention to the fact that, yes, at the time he had a wife, so she did not really try anything, but she's always wanted Teddy. So clearly, in my personal opinion, when I saw this dynamic, it gave me Stephen King Misery vibes. Whereas there's someone that is obsessed with someone else, and they kind of like have them, they're holding them captive. Obviously, Teddy is going to get out because the next episode he does meet up with Franklin. But I kind of feel like at some point Teddy has to eliminate her from all of this. So I'm curious to see if that's what happens. But overall, a very good episode. We know that Peaches was missing. Peaches they will answer that question next week about where he was at and what's going on with him. But overall, I thought it was a great episode. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing where things go from here. But yeah, yeah, very good episode. Definitely worth watching, especially if you saw last week's episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, excellent takeaways from you. Always like adding another perspective to things as well. You know, even the things that I mentioned before, you kind of added a whole nother layer to it. So
Oh yeah,
impressive.
thank
Um,
you.
so there is a lot that you said that I want to talk about and have, you know, expand on and have more of a back and forth. So we're gonna head into our questions and discussion segment. But you know, just another friendly reminder, if you're enjoying this, please leave a comment, let us know your thoughts and theories about the show. And also please do hit that like button too. Just because you know it's a big help to us if you do that, you know, and this is free content. It takes time from us to do this and everything. And you know, we appreciate all of you. So please, if you like it, you know, hit that like button, please. Um, but yeah, so let's get right into our questions and discussions now. So I don't even know where to start because there's so many interesting threads to what you just said in your takeaways. So I'm going to go straight to the elephant in the room that we kind of haven't talked about that much yet, and that's
Mhm.
peaches. You know, so
Yes.
in this episode, everyone's kind of assuming and you know, coming up with the theory that Peaches has something to do with it because now he's gone missing. You know, he's not answering any calls and any or anything like that. So they you know they put it together in their minds that Peaches is the one who sold us out. You know, he either he did this or he teamed up with someone who did it. You know, something like that. So this is the conclusion everyone's come to. And yeah, like that, like when Franklin gets out, we see that he's very disturbed and he's very upset, he's angered. um and then they go to the stash spot, which has been raided, like all the money taken and everything like that, when they go looking for him and stuff. So yeah, there's a big question mark around Peaches right now because we believe that he was sick and he had, you know, possibly HIV or AIDS. Now that could have been a curveball to throw us off. You know, so but there is, you could say that maybe he is sick and this whole thing is a misunderstanding too. So there is that other layer because we still haven't heard from the character to confirm that he was involved in this.
Mhm.
We haven't seen that confirmation yet. So he could still be sick, and maybe there's another rat in the clique. Maybe somebody else sold them out, or you know, maybe somebody else was talking to let, you know, Kane's crew know where they were going to be at. So there's that whole other element to it now. So I wanted to ask you, Richard, what do you personally think about Peaches at this point? Was he the one that sold them out? Is he not sick, or is he still sick? What do you think is going on with Peaches after seeing this episode?
Well, that's a very good question. Um, that's I think something that everybody's going to be talking about after this episode. My personal opinion is that I mean they've given you a lot of hints that the character could, you know, is sick and it could be HIV. I think the biggest hint was in the last episode when Parisa made that comment about a patient giving a nurse HIV. Now, what I think would be a very interesting twist would be if he was the patient that gave the nurse HIV, because you notice how everything is connected. The relationship between Teddy, you know, Franklin, Gustavo, everything is connected. So that'd be a very interesting twist. Um, but when you think about the situation with the money, clearly, I think it's a situation where there, you know, basically he felt he was in danger from Kane, and maybe Kane, because again, as Franklin alluded to, only him and Peaches knew about that stash spot, where to come. That's why it makes Peaches look suspicious. So I feel as though because we he had that comment where he said, you know, he cares more about his health. He would never turn against the team. Could be a situation where, you know, maybe Kane threatened him, and so he gave up some information in terms of where they might potentially be at, and of course the money, because I'm pretty sure that that money was used to hire all those people to come after them. So I mean that's what my guess would be, but I guess we have to wait until next week to see what happens. But I to answer the question, do I think Peaches is behind all of this? No, I don't. I mean, I think the character is legitimately sick because they made it a point to mention that multiple episodes. They could they easily twist it in another direction and say no, he isn't sick and he is involved. Of course they can. That'll be interesting. But in my opinion, I think the twist that I mentioned, where he's the patient that gave HIV to, I think that's a better twist because I can't really, the way they threw that into that conversation, that was something that you did not need to write into the conversation with Parisa and Teddy, and I feel it's in there for a reason to let you know, yes, this did exist during that time period, but how people dealt with it at that particular time, not really something that they have shown yet on the show. So I'm very curious to see what's going on with all of this. And of course, you know, Jerome is the one character that said, no, I'm cool with Peaches. He would never do anything like this. So now he's going to be wondering what's going on with Peaches. I think that's why he popped off and got into that fight in this episode, because he's still trying to figure this out and a little frustrated to think that Peaches did turn on them. But I think that is a misdirect. But again, we'll see what happens next week. But I think Peaches is sick. And I think that Kane did everything that he could to get access to that money, and he used that money to set up all this stuff that happened in the episode, in the 2 episodes.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I think my theory kind of lies in, you know, with what you said as well. I still think he's sick. And the thing is, when you're sick like that, it makes you vulnerable too. So maybe it's a situation where you know, Kane, you know, he targeted him and roughed him up, and you know, Peaches was unable to protect himself, and then you know, Kane basically forced him to give up the stash and everything else. And maybe when they catch up to Peaches in that next episode, he'll actually tell Franklin, look, I'm sick, I got this HIV, I just found out about it. And you know, Kane caught me, you know, he caught me lacking basically, and roughed me up, and I didn't know what to do. You know, I was in a vulnerable state. You know, he'll try to appeal to Franklin. But here's what I think is going to happen, because I do think Peaches is being genuine, and that he, you know, in this scenario, I think he really is sick, and maybe he didn't mean to give up Franklin's stash or anything, or any information. You know, maybe he didn't mean to do it. But I think, you know, like you said, Rich, things happen in the show for a reason. At the start of this season, we saw, you know, Franklin killing Rob, and you know, that whole situation. And we saw the look on Peach's face, you know, and I think this is something that could ultimately happen to him, you know, with Franklin. Franklin, you know, killing him. Because you know, he's at a point now where he doesn't need any weakness around him. And the sad reality is that, you know, when you're sick like that and stuff, people look at you that way, like, you know, you're a vulnerability. And he might think that he has no more use for Peaches anymore, and just discard him like he's nothing. So, and
you see, I like that a lot, because they're telling you the story and they're re-emphasizing that Franklin is a monster. Remember in the season finale last year, when he went to the place, the place to his father where he had all the poor people staying, he's talking about, no, they all need to get out of here until I see Alton. They're reminding you that the character is ruthless and a monster. So that'd be very interesting if it is revealed that Peaches is sick. Franklin has no sympathy and still kills him anyway. That goes along with the narrative that he is a monster. So I can see that happening 100%.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's a very critical time for Franklin right now. Like, he's got, you know, his Veronique is pregnant, and the whole Teddy situation is happening, and now this Kane thing. So, you know, he doesn't need any weakness, any, you know, he doesn't want anyone giving up any information to anyone. And just the fact that Peaches may have done that, you know, he's not going to let that slide. He's not going to allow Peaches to keep walking around, because what if Kane approaches him again to, you know, for more information, or, you know, to use him in another way, perhaps. So he can't let that slide if that's the case. So I think, yeah, he will absolutely get rid of Peaches when he runs into him. So
Absolutely. We'll see what happens. I mean, they have a lot of different ways they could go. I will say if they're going to go the path and they're going to say that he is not sick. Well, the only reason I could think of him wanting to turn on Franklin is, as you said, he feels uneasy about what happened with Rob. And maybe he's not getting quite. I mean, we do know that things have changed now with Franklin. You know, he's making a lot more money, but obviously Louis and Jerome are making a lot more money too. Maybe Peaches never got, never got paid more for what he does now. So all these are reasons why he could turn. But I definitely think the sickness thing, they've mentioned it too much with all these different episodes for it not to be something related to that. So we have to see. Maybe next week.
yeah, yeah. I hope we do get those answers next week. But yeah, definitely chime in the comments. I want to hear more thoughts and theories about that because that's it's a very interesting one. But so I guess the next question is, was Kane's reveal satisfying to you? Because they set it up last week. They set the tone. They made it tense. They were like they set up basically a whodunit situation where it's like, who is behind this? And we had so many theories. We saw people kind of speculating in many ways about who it could be and stuff. And it was finally confirmed in this episode that it was Kane, who is Kevin's brother, and he's been serving time for I can't remember how long they said, but yeah, he's been serving time, and now he's out, and now he's on the warpath because he found out what happened with not only Kevin, his brother, but also he mentioned another person who fell victim to operation.
It was their cousin named Delroy who got stabbed.
Delroy, yeah, that's the one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the question is, was this satisfying for you at the end? To see Kane after all of that build up. What do you think, Rich?
Well, I mean, I would say yes and no. It was great to finally figure out by the end of the episode who is behind all of this. Do I think that they did a very good job of just having this character come out of nowhere? I mean, maybe that is something that could be debated, but I mean, it makes sense from a storyline standpoint because again, Franklin's past had to catch up to him at some point. What I question is when Franklin had that conversation, did he really think that was going to end peacefully? Like you're just going to have a conversation with Kane, and he's going to say, "Okay, you know what? I didn't mean to shoot at your mom, or shoot at your girlfriend, whatever. So it's all good. We're cool now." Did he really think that that's how this was going to end, and that this guy is going to try to come after him again? And if so, I would say that Franklin is delusional if he thinks that, because most people would feel when he came to Kane and Kane already was saying no, that you take him out right then and there. You don't wait until this to escalate even further, because now that you know who the guy is, that's great. But now, of course, Franklin is going to go back and think about how is he going to use his strategy to take this guy out. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Obviously, he's coming after Franklin, but he made a point to go after the entire family. Now he says that he's going to definitely focus on Franklin. And the other thing that I also think is a very intriguing point as well is that Leon was trying to be peaceful with this. He has an interest in trying to make this end peacefully. So he's basically going to be stuck in the middle because Franklin may have wanted to end peacefully, but he's going to be pushed to do whatever he has to do. And this is what you made comments to about Gary weeks ago. What is Franklin prepared to do? Well, he better be prepared to kill this guy because this guy is not going to just go away. So I look forward to seeing what happens. It's going to create a lot more intensity and action in the remaining episodes of the season for sure. But as far as how they introduced this character, I didn't have too many issues with it. I do think they need to dive a little bit more into so you can feel the full effects of how the family was impacted by Kevin's death, because we never got that. He did mention, broken family and all this other stuff when he had that little monologue with Franklin, but I think we need to actually see that. And I believe that the preview for next week, it did show Leon having a conversation with him again, trying to broker peace. So that's not going to end well. We already know. But I look forward to seeing anyway where they go with this. They did mention the character sort of like a big brother mentor to Franklin and Leon. So, but obviously all bets are off now because of he is not over what happened to Kevin. And I fully understand that. But yeah, I definitely want to see them highlight how the family is impacted by this because it's a broken family. We understand that. But I just want to get more context as to how that death, how much of a difference it made, not just in what's happening with Kane, but maybe some of the other family members as well. And they can simply do that by him talking about what has happened when he has that conversation with Leon. He can talk about what has happened since Kevin died. That'd be great. That's all. I'm not asking for them to do too much, but we'll see how they handle it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned something there that I agree with. That they definitely need to show us the broken family and how that that Kevin death impacted them. Because there's a rule in writing: show don't tell. So if you want the viewer to feel a certain way about the characters and the scenes that are happening, you have to show and not just tell us. So, we've had Kevin tell us that, his family was impacted and it's a broken home, broken family. But they need to show us, the audience, that for us to really take that in and feel a certain way about the actions that Franklin did, in the past and everything. So I think that's very important. I know it's difficult to show everything in an hour or 50 minutes. But that is one of the things they definitely need to emphasize in that next episode and just kind of show us that dynamic.
I agree. Yeah. I agree 100%. And I would also add, if they want to make this even simpler, they can also mention that one of the family members now is an addict. So that not only is it just the fact that Kevin got killed, but that the same drugs that they have been selling, now someone in the family is hooked on it also. So that's another way to show how he got impacted by this.
Yeah, exactly. And like when they show us, it definitely has to be super impactful to justify what Kane has done with shooting up restaurants and all these different places. For him to go to that extent, we really have to see how damaged the family is. And I think that would be a great thing, if we saw one of them was a drug addict, because of all this that happened. So absolutely. But yeah, and my thing is as well, because I am happy that we now have the Kane reveal, and I do like that Franklin's past is coming back to haunt him, because if this show is ending, in the next season, we've reached a point where it's like, you have to tie up those loose ends now, and this is like one of them loose ends. Like this is his past, really coming back to haunt him. So, and I like that aspect to it. But the one thing I'll say is it happened so fast at the end when they came to that conclusion that it was Kane. I felt that maybe that could have been set up a little better, because it just felt like, all of a sudden they were like, oh, you remember that guy Kane? Oh, he just got out. Maybe he did it. It wasn't those literal words that they said, of course, but it felt that way. It just happened so quick.
I agree 100. I agree 100% with what you said. It maybe would have been better if Kane was a part of the show prior to all of this, and say that he was working with them behind the scenes. Yeah. And maybe you got a chance to see him, and maybe you look at this character and be like, yes, he's a loyal character. And then it's revealed all along, yes, he's had an ulterior motive. That would have definitely been a lot better. But I guess they really didn't want to revisit this storyline, I guess, until a later time. But yeah, they definitely could have thought about it a little bit more in terms of the buildup, because the way that they presented what happened with Kevin and how Kevin was very loyal to Franklin and all this other stuff. But then when it came to that situation where he decided he was going to sell the recipe over, that's when everything went sideways. So I really like how they handled that, how that happened. But yeah, they definitely could have done a lot better as far as introducing Kane when you mentioned that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have too much critique about the actual the basketball court meeting itself, like when they came face to face. It's just the setup to that. It was just very quick. Like, you know,
Yeah. Very sudden.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 1 minute they didn't know who was behind it. Then the next minute they're like, oh, remember Kane? It was him. You know, so yeah, I just feel like that part in particular could have been set up better. But yeah, like I think it's great that we have some more tension in the show, because we thought it was mainly going to be, you know, Teddy versus Franklin, but now there's a lot of tension coming from everywhere. There's also the tension between Franklin and Louis. There's Buckley as well in the background. There's tension from everywhere now, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Go ahead.
And by the way, to go to something you said on a previous episode,
Yeah.
Teddy definitely is going to tell Franklin when he sees him, you know who is behind this, you need to take care of it.
Oh yeah.
So
yep.
that's definitely going to happen now. In that next episode, I fully expect him to say that to Franklin.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's going to be order number one. Like,
yep.
you have to take care of this now, because I mean, Teddy almost died because of that. So
yep.
And it was he told Parissa in this episode, you know, they weren't after me, they were after someone else. So he knows that they came for Franklin, but he almost died. So he is not going to be happy about that, and he is absolutely going to tell Franklin, you need to sort this out, you know, because I almost died over this. So yeah, I can't wait for that scene to happen. It seems like Teddy's still kind of nursing himself back to full health, so I'm wondering how long that process will take. But yeah, I can't wait until that, you know, that happens when they come face to face again. But yes, speaking of Teddy, so I want to go back to, you know, what I said earlier about, you know, Oso, aka Gustavo. So do you think now that Gustavo's loyalty is leaning more towards Franklin, and because, you know, Franklin told him that Teddy was watching the transaction take place, do you think that might raise any red flags to Gustavo now about Teddy? So, you know, what do you think is going to happen with that relationship now?
That's a very good question. I still think that Gustavo is not going to try to get involved. I mean, he's going to definitely, you know, watch Teddy a little bit carefully. But I personally don't think that he's going to say anything to Teddy. He's just going to see how they operate. Because, you know, he had the comment when he left, and I question this. When him and Franklin were parting ways at the club, and he tells him, oh yeah, take care of your boy. Wonder if he was talking about Teddy when he mentioned that to Franklin, because he already knows now that, yeah, Teddy is all over Franklin. He has his eyes on him and everything that he does. So I kind of feel like he's going to try to stay out of that, because again, he's concerned about his family, taking care of his kids. So he's not really thinking about any type of tension. As long as business is flowing and he's not impacted, then it's fine. Because even in this episode, you know, he gets beat, you know, to take a lot of punishment from that gang, and yet afterward, it's no hard feelings. He didn't try to go back and kill him, because this shows you how the character has evolved. Because in previous seasons, he was out for vengeance. So to show you that he didn't care, he just wanted to get free and get back to his family, that shows you the character has changed. So I don't think that he's going to want to really pick a side in this thing between Teddy and Franklin. He's still going to listen to both of them, do what they say, but I don't think he's going to, you know, really get involved, unless, of course, it gets to a point where Teddy now starts to investigate Gustavo and his family. Now, because he's personally impacted, then he would take a much more greater interest. But I think for now, he's going to just try to stay out of what's going on between those two.
Yeah, that would be a good stance for him to take, to just not get involved. But I think even if he takes that passive sort of stance and tries not to take sides, I think there's going to be pressure put on him eventually. And I like that you mentioned Gustavo's family because they kind of showed us when he was leaving, his girl came and everything like that. So and we've seen glimpses of him interacting with his family earlier in the season, I believe, as well. So I do think that might come into play, like, because Teddy knows a lot about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any leverage that he needs to use against Gustavo to make him loyal or force him to do what he wants, I think Teddy, he's crazy enough to threaten Gustavo and his family in some way.
Oh yeah, that's a very, very good point. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that could be something that happens. But yeah, just the way that he bonded with Franklin, I think there is some kind of humility between them now. Franklin opened up about his child, his baby and everything to him. So I think there is a bond there, and an understanding. But yeah, I just don't know what will happen with the Teddy situation, and whether maybe Teddy will try to appeal to Gustavo in any way to keep him loyal, or if he's just going to straight up threaten him or something. But it's going to be interesting to see how Gustavo reacts.
Yeah, and just to add on one other quick final point is that I do know that you mentioned earlier that Franklin went back to save Gustavo in the end. So that definitely means something. Maybe it means that if Franklin does get in way too deep with Teddy, maybe Gustavo would save him. And I think that's a question that they want to leave you thinking about as the season continues, because I kind of feel like that's an important thing. Gustavo was it felt like Gustavo was surprised Franklin would come back to save him, but they've established now they have a much stronger bond. So very curious to see, and I do agree with what you said. There probably is going to come a point where he's going to be forced to pick a side, and I'm just very curious to see how that's going to play out. But I don't want them to rush it, but I definitely want to see how it plays out. I will say that much.
Oh yeah, for sure. This isn't even anything we have to see this season, because at this
Yeah.
point, in this point, I don't think they can wrap everything up in the remaining episodes. So I definitely think there's another season behind this one, and that season will be the final one. But yeah, the Gustavo's loyalty doesn't have to come into question in this season. It could be something that happens in the next season, but
Mm-hmm.
it is going to be put to the test at some point, I think. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, speaking of loyalties, now let's talk about Veronique. So so yeah, we spoke a bit about her in our takeaways. Basically, is she being genuine or not? And there are things that would lead you to think she is being absolutely genuine, but from what we see, it seems like the fan base doesn't trust her at all. We're always seeing in the the groups that we're in and the comments, people don't really trust her, and I think they've given us good reason to not trust her. Sometimes some of the expressions the actress is using and things like that, the way she looks, like she doesn't come across as someone you can trust all the time. And of course, she mentioned this whole thing about her mother in this episode, about her mother being a scammer. And yeah, so that seems like a pretty suspicious. It seems like a very strange thing for them to put in there. Like for them to specifically say her mom was a scammer. So there has to be something behind this.
Mm-hmm.
I know that she is heavily pushing this development thing with Franklin, and she's also having his child. So I think that there could be some sort of long-term play here at hand. With regards to maybe her getting Franklin to invest in. Obviously he's already committed to investing in the property, but I feel like she's going to try and leverage the baby somehow to have him put some cash into some sort of fund for the baby, and maybe she runs away with it, something of that nature. That could be a possibility. But what are you thinking about Veronique, Rich? Because I know you had more to say about her also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as you mentioned earlier, they made the character look a little genuine, But again, the major red flag is the scammer thing. I really feel like her mom being a con artist, so to speak. That means growing up, she learned a lot of stuff from her mom, and some of these bad habits as well. And when I did, and I find it interesting how when Sissy asked her where's her mom at, she alludes to, "Oh, I don't know where she's at right now. She could be anywhere." Um, I just find it makes you question a lot about what's happening with this particular character and what her true motivations are. Um, so I'm very curious to see, but I definitely think that them mentioning that con artist, the con woman thing again, I think Sissy, when she talked to her about that, she is telling her in one instance, yes, you need to keep the baby safe. So the baby, he or she should not be around anything that's happening now. And you got to understand, if you're going to be with my son, this is something that's going to continue because he refuses to stop. Even though he's told her, oh, he's trying to get out, trying to get clean, that will never, ever be the case. Because once you're in too deep, you like what you're doing, it's going to be hard for him to stop that. So she in one instance, she warned her about that. But I also think she wouldn't want her around Franklin anyway, because you don't know what her true intentions are. The con artist thing is a very big red flag. And I think that anyone that is a parent, if you knew that your child, uh, you know, your son or daughter, obviously grown, was messing around with somebody, and and the person they mess around with actually does this, where they're pulling scams on people, I'm pretty sure you're not going to want your child around them, because it's not a good look. So I'm very curious to see what happens. One point I do want to mention though, and I think this is directly tied to what we mentioned earlier about Kane. The fact that Franklin would meet Kane, obviously you're not going to try to take him out right then and there, because there's a whole bunch of kids, a lot of people, you can't really do that. And they had security over there as well, by the way. But I do think this is connected, because I can see Kane trying to take another hit out on Franklin, and then Verone gets killed. Now Franklin loses her and the baby, and then he will be on a complete warpath, and it'll be his fault because he did not take out Kane. So I'm very curious to see how is he going to retaliate in the next several episodes, because you cannot just sit on this and wait for him to make another move. He made the comment, we can come after you anytime as well. Okay, I want to see if Franklin follows through on that. But if he is wise, that needs to be something that they do immediately and not wait, because it's going to have a lingering effect on others around him, and not really just a situation where she can get killed. Even his mom could end up getting shot also. So he definitely needs to think about that. But as for the Verone character, I mean, I thought that they were making progress as far as trying to show you that she's genuine. But as soon as I heard that con woman thing, I said, no, okay, now I don't trust the character. I don't care what she says. I don't trust the character. So I understand her motivation for not wanting to be around Franklin right now with all that's going on, but it's hard to trust the character anytime you mention that stuff about conning people. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, because I mean, oftentimes, I mean, this might not be the case for everyone, but what your parents do, or the people you're raised by, that has an influence on you too in some way. Now, when you reach the state of maturity and everything, you can easily choose not to do these things. So she could choose, not to be a con woman too, like her mother. But I like the fact that, it was so blatantly mentioned. I just don't think that's the case now. I think there's definitely something to that. And I think, she's either in communication with her mother, or maybe her mother's even nearby in the city in Los Angeles. So yeah, I think, there's more to that. And I think that because she was so aggressive with, well, not aggressive, but she's trying to be so persuasive with the investment thing.
Yes,
I think
it.
There's definitely some sort of con at play here, on her behalf, either her or her mother. And if she's told her mother about Franklin or anything, because I can't remember if she said that or not, but if she's told her mother about him, I don't know how much she might have told her mother, but I'm sure the mother will probably because the thing is, even if you're not a con person anymore, it's always going to be in your mind. So it's like you're always going to be sizing up different opportunities to, snake someone and take money. So I'm sure her mother would probably, if she knew a lot about Franklin, she would probably advise her to do some of these things, because she, these are things that she probably used to do, like in terms of lining people up for their money. So, and scamming and stuff. So I just feel like there's something to that for sure. So, yeah,
I agree.
We can't trust her. And going back to what you were saying about, because Veronique is now backing away from Franklin a bit because of Kane. I think that's gonna be the main driving factor in Franklin wanting to kind of put an end to this Kane thing as well. Because if Veronique backs away, because she was basically saying, we should only see each other at work, and that's it pretty much. I think that is going to put a heavy strain on this relationship between them. And if that continues for too long, the relationship could easily be over, even though she's having his child. So I think Franklin, he's not going to sit around and let that happen. And he's going to definitely want to do something about that. And he's going to keep trying to reassure her that everything is okay. So it's going to be interesting to see their interactions like moving forward now in the show. But yeah, was you going to say something else?
Oh no, I was going to say I agree with pretty much everything you said. I'm very curious to see how this storyline ends, and as you said, it may not all get wrapped up and may have to continue into season 6. But the character is someone I think you definitely shouldn't trust now. Again, I understand her mom is the one that taught her a lot of this stuff, but we have to assume that she's playing the game here. And I think the investment thing, as you said, the fact that they were so adamant, oh yeah, I can try and get Louis and Jerome in still, that definitely is a sign, because anytime you ask somebody for some money and they don't really know all the details about what's happening with the money, I mean, the property, they know a little bit of stuff, whatever they showed us in the show is what they know so far, but I wouldn't trust that, because we've only been introduced to this character this season. So you have to definitely question, who is this character? What are her true motivations? Because we haven't seen her at all prior to season 5. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think that payoff is going to be huge, because like Veronique is a character where like the entire fan base has been vocal in not trusting her, it seems like. So I can't wait till we finally see that payoff, because everyone's going to be like, I told you so. I told you we couldn't trust her. So yeah, I can't wait for that to happen. But maybe there's still room for them to pull the wool over our eyes with that. But I just don't think so at this point. Like this episode was a little too obvious that something is going on here. So
I agree.
So yeah. But yeah, cool. That was pretty much all the questions I had. But was there anything else in particular that you wanted to mention before we kind of end off here?
No, I'm just gonna say very good episode. I feel like next week we'll definitely get an answer about Peaches. By the way, for those that don't know, if they don't already know, I believe that the episode next week is called Lying in a Hammock. So somebody is lying. Maybe Peaches did lie to them. I mean, I have no idea, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm enjoying the show. It's still, like I said, despite the criticisms that we spoke about today, this is still a far better show than another show that I'm not going to mention on this podcast, because people already know what show it is. It's another show that we cover. But yeah, it's a very good show, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next 4 episodes.
Absolutely, same here. I can't wait. Like I'm literally like I'm hooked now. I'm craving like the next episode. I can't wait to see what happens. And yeah, although I love the other show that we're talking about, yeah, like Snowfall just gives me a different kind of feel, like, with the suspense and the level of writing. So yeah, I can't wait to see what happens next. But we definitely want to hear from you guys. So once again, I want to urge you all, encourage you to leave your comments. Let us know what you thought of this episode and, any of the subjects that we brought up in this discussion today. So yeah, that is going to be it for today. We will be back once again next week around the same time. So, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, to make sure that, you get the notification when we do release these podcast episodes. So thanks for listening, everyone. And we appreciate all of the support, and have a great week. Stay healthy, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Peace.